Right, this is going to be another episode of the Best Damn League Show, period, slash, full stop, slash, whatever. Well, it's all good. Here's the thing, technically, it's second to last episode anyway, so we've only got one more of these. It is going to be a return guest, because obviously we had DanDan on it in the past. He is still the coach of Solary. One detail, though, I actually never knew. I just saw it now, actually, when I was getting the information ready for this overlay, is they actually list you as a Spanish player. You're actually part Spanish.
I think that might be wrong. Well, technically wrong. I was born in Spain and I was raised there for 18 years, but I have no Spanish nationality or passport whatsoever.
Okay.
So I could probably get it if I wanted to, but I'm technically 100% born and bred Dutch. Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, just one of those curious things since you work in the Spanish league, you know. Is it just a coincidence?
Yeah. I mean, I played in Spain once. I went 0-18, so that was a bad time. But
okay, fair enough.
we don't speak about that. But yeah, I mean, I can speak Spanish and it's all good. But yeah, no Spanish passport or anything, sadly.
Okay, fair enough. Technically, by the way, without making a whole tangent, the country of Netherlands wouldn't exist without Spain. Look up the history, guys. That is actually part of their origin story, sort of. You know, yep. That's true. That's true. That's not a diss. That's just factual. Anyway, let's get straight into the episode. What did you say?
Netherlands praises the Spanish king or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
I learned all our history from the Spanish side, and they all were like, "Yeah, we're great and all here, and we were there and all that stuff." But yeah, obviously, yeah.
Okay, so obviously there's actually been this really weird thing when we do this show that there's been like a week and a half of just nothing. I actually still don't even know what the reason it is. Like, is the reason something to do with Valorant? Was there ever any official reason given why there was like a week and a half off with LEC?
Yeah, they said that basically they couldn't move the thing. So the official reason, obviously we don't know behind the scenes, but the official reason is they couldn't move everything from Berlin to Madrid in time.
Oh, okay, right. It's just to do the logistics of the finals, right? Okay, I guess that vaguely has a logic to it, but whatever. It is what it is, isn't it? Right, okay, let's just get into the episode. So let's start with not complaining. Let's start with what is good. Dan, what is good at the moment, aside from not my voice? But keep going.
Actually, I think, I'm not sure how recent this was, but I was thinking about it in my off season because throughout every single team that I've been in, and throughout a lot of, I mean, just you kind of hear stuff when you're in the scene, right? Is that sponsorships and stuff are getting kind of tight in teams, and I think with the introduction of the gambling, like sponsorships, which are now allowed by Riot in both EMEA and in Tier 1 orgs, I think that's actually a good thing. Might be a bit controversial because obviously gambling is gambling, and there might be some negative connotations with that, but I think in terms of orgs and in terms of acquiring sponsorships, I think that's probably one of the bigger kind of like revenue streams that might come in. So I think that's actually a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, by the way, make some more points of that. Like, that's a good opener, but have you got any extra reasons as to why you think it's good or what you think it'll bring to the scene or something?
Well, first of all, there's going to be a little bit more regulation, I'm guessing, right?
Okay.
I think there's going to be a little bit more overview. I think that it might be a bit more responsible. I think it's also going to be a bit more official because obviously if you're tied to any kind of like orgs or any like Riot legitimacy, it might also bring some more, little less shady websites into play. I know also that in terms of like if you go to like a casino or something, or if you go to like some other like sports betting, I think that their margins are about like 7% of like winnings and stuff.
Right.
And that's generally like seen as like a good thing. And I think with these like fantasy leagues and all this, it's pretty high.
Right.
It's up to like 30, so there might be a little bit of I'm not gonna say scamming, but I'm fairly sure it's like pretty non-regulated so far, and there's like these games and these loot boxes and stuff. So those are like extremely high margins, which is obviously good for the orgs, but bad for the people. I think that if you kind of like could make it more official, I'm thinking Riot's probably going to look into this as well. Maybe some things are going to be not as allowed and people are going to be less scammed. I mean, obviously, my personal opinion is gambling not so good, as we do as a person, but at least it's going to be a bit more regulation there. I think that the things which are a little bit worse for the people are going to probably get toned down a little bit, and at least, I mean, it's just going to be a bit more official rather than just like the people who kind of want to gamble and kind of go on these websites, they're just gonna kind of get like the worst of the worst, rather than now you can actually also kind of like root for the team that's or I'm guessing you can kind of like support your team by at least gambling for the website that's like sponsors them, I guess, in a way.
There's like a logic to that. By the way, that is actually literally obviously how influencers work. If you're going to gamble anyway, you gamble with the one that your influencer is sponsored by. Yeah, of course. There's a logic.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I think it's honestly mostly positive. Like if you want to gamble, you're going to gamble anyway. At least that now you're going to
Okay.
gamble a little bit more responsibly, a little bit more officially, and the chance that you get scammed are probably going to get worse with time as Rad's going to look into it. Yeah.
Cool. So from this, like, let's leave aside the ethical things first, right?
Yep.
Let's put those to one side. Let's purely talk about the impact on the industry. So what I've been told. So to be clear, I haven't worked on like the financial side firsthand. Obviously, I never worked in a GM senior management position since like Mad Lions. So I don't like on EG. I just wasn't told any of this stuff, and same with Heretics. But I do talk to a lot of people in different regions secondhand, just to like for my own curiosity. But I can't tell you whether people are telling me fibs or whether it's directly the case. So what I've been told is that basically in Brazil that the region was very very profitable until they took away the gambling sponsorships, at which point it wasn't basically,
Right.
and that basically that was when those were like banned or like restricted or in somewhere. I don't fully understand exactly what happened. Then people became more interested in the merger, but they basically weren't interested in the merger before because it was just wildly profitable just to go with these sites. Now, I think that the problem is if you go and allow gambling sponsorships. There have been a couple of cases recently in esports, in League of Legends, specifically for the VCS League and
Okay.
the
Oh, sure.
LPL 2, right? I
Sure.
forgot
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
what the second division in LPL was called.
LDL
Where
or
there have been
LSBL 1 to 2.
yeah, it was a lot. I can't remember what it was, right? But basically, there were a couple of teams in LPL and like a very large number of teams in the LPL second division, which were heavily implicated in match fixing. And basically, if this is the way you are going to go, you have to then show like a literal no tolerance policy for this because it can the risk you have is undermining the value of your product by attaching yourself too closely to gambling on that side if you allow things like match fixing to go like what is perceived publicly as a too soft approach, right? Because it will look like you're pandering to this sort of area. So I think that is that is something that then becomes something that Riot needs to unbalance. Are the finances bad enough that this is something that's necessary? I mean, they have alcohol sponsorships. I think it allows. Okay, so on the negative side, obviously, like sponsor like there are all kinds of ethical things about what kind of age range your audience is for gambling, which have been stated many many times. I'm not going to go over them again, like we all know what they are. But I think it gives orgs an opportunity for whether they want to take that kind of money or whether they don't, right? And that is something that definitely org by org that they can go and make their decisions. But what I will say is that having allowed this, if there was to be some kind of a match fixing scandal in the West, which so far I think we've avoided generally, except for like one or two very very fringe cases. Like there was one case in the US second division how a player was just literally running down the game in the most blatant way possible. I think that those and there was a couple of situations I think in the Polish league. I'm sure people will correct me in the comments. But if you ever get a major issue like that, it's going to really bring the integrity of your league into question, especially if you have links to those kinds of sponsorships. So those are the only things I put to one side. I think it's a balancing act. I don't know how bad the finances are. If they are really that bad, where the industry just cannot function anymore, then what I will say is that there are other industries that take those kind of sponsorships that also kind of market to younger audiences. But I think that that's something that people should, if they are following orgs and things like this, they should act in a way which incentivizes orgs to behave in the way that they want them to behave. And I would say that there are definitely some orgs out there who have basically publicly said that they're never going to take gambling sponsorships. And
I think Koi said it, right?
Yes,
Oh, really?
Okay. Well, yeah. Like probably were the big ones because obviously I follow Adam, who's because he used to be Mad Lions, right? So they said it. I think there's a couple of other orgs that have said it too. So all I say is, if you disagree with it, behave in a way which incentivizes more orgs to take a stand like that, if that's what is important to you.
This could easily queue up like basically a 30-minute fucking rant. In fact, maybe I'll even use this as like the pilot episode of doing like a Thorin's thoughts on this, because I could actually do a really interesting video. But I'll give you the like 5-minute version. So first of all, disclaimer, I am literally sponsored by a betting company and have been for many years with like short intervals where I wasn't, just because of industry stuff. And essentially, I obviously don't think it's unethical. I think it's a personal choice if you choose to do it. Now, I will say, if anyone's ever seen my streams, I do my streams very differently to anyone else I'm aware of who's actually sponsored by things. Like, for example, most streams I actually always say at the end of talking about whatever the like bonus is, I always say don't put in any amount that you can't afford to lose. And if you have an addictive personality, I would suggest you find a different hobby. It probably isn't for you, mate. If you're the sort of person who can't just do like a small bet and then just leave it and go, okay, I'm not going to do it, then that's not for you, mate. That's so. I will say that in itself, by the way, in my opinion, is also a sign whether some of these companies are legit. If they would tell you we can't be sponsored with you, if you say that, then that's already a bad red flag there, boys. So spoiler, I haven't had any pushback ever for the way I do it, because I'm trying to get authentic people who don't have a problem to gamble anyway, or rather offer them a better alternative than maybe the site they currently use is the way I would think of it. So what I will say is this. First of all, I actually think DanDan is correct. There's an element which is naive in thinking, like, well, I don't like gambling, so no one should be allowed it. And as a result, the best way to stop anyone getting hurt with gambling is make it totally shady and totally unregulated and to banish it from society. No, that actually makes no sense at all. What you ensure then is only criminals will be the ones providing gambling services, and they will be all in other countries that are impossible to touch in any context. Spoiler, most of them are anyway. Like, even a lot of the legit ones, by the way, that are all run by Americans or British people or whatever, they're all registered in like Cyprus or fucking Belize or some other country or somewhere in the Southeast Asia or something, some country where they don't have to worry about like getting contacted by the government. So essentially what DanDan's pointing out here is you can actually create a different impetus though for these people to be more legit or totally legit by essentially having, it's almost like group behavior, isn't it? If what they found was these betting companies that by sponsoring teams within League of Legends, by the way, I can already tell you, there's a side thing I'll get to in a second, which is Riot have already said that they're going to use this company called like Grid that they have ownership in to actually do the vetting of these companies. It's not just that you go, right, betting's available, and so tomorrow you have every crazy Russian, obscure, internet scam, like in theory it's going to be approved people, like a list of names, and you're going to pick from that list if you're getting the deals. But just the fact that they are allowed entry and access to this part of esports and like media culture will actually incentivize those companies not to rip off their individual customers, because if they rip off their individual customers and it causes a stink, already that causes a problem for everyone in the ecosystem, and then eventually it will cause a problem for Riot. Like, say someone had like 100,000 euros and they weren't paid it out, eventually that's going to cause issues for Riot, which then means Riot are going to say you're not on the approved list anymore, which, by the way, if that ends up costing that company $2 million, it wasn't worth it to nick 100k. So essentially, unless they're just scammers, it won't make sense. And if people don't know, guys, you can't simultaneously tell me the house always wins, they gamble it, but then also tell me they're all scammers. They wouldn't need to be if they always win. If they always make the majority of the money, which they obviously do, because most people bet and don't understand odds, etc., and there's luck involved, then logically you can run a legit business in that space. But anytime you have a legit business, you will also get scammers that go around it, like parasites, who want to like trick you that they're the legit business or get between you and the money, or look like they're a one and then leave with all the cash, etc. So obviously, yes, you will always get any time there's any questionable area, you will get loads of criminals around it. But I agree, actually. I do think actually that in theory this would incentivize the ones that get on the list to be even more legit, whether they had any questionable motivations anyway. Then also, I will just point out, like Peter did, it's one thing to go, I'm drawing the line here. Well, after the people cutting off people's heads are involved in esports, after all the alcohol sponsors, after tobacco, after like, mate, and stuff like the UFC, they advertise like Harley Davidson motorcycles, mate, they're fucking super dangerous. What are you talking about? Like, but I don't think anyone has a problem with someone who doesn't have an issue driving Harley Davidson. It's like, okay, I wouldn't say little kids should do it. There's another thing, by the way, just a quick thing to put out there. where everyone says this thing of like, but you're advertising to kids. First of all, I don't know what we're talking about here. This industry was never advertised to kids, as far as I know. They always claimed it was for adults. They always claimed the demographic everyone wants is 18 to 24-year-old males. In every country I'm aware of, that would be legal for gambling. And then secondly, if the same logic is you're advertising to kids, then how could you ever have an alcohol sponsor? By the way, here's a crazy one for you. A lot of you woke people haven't thought about. By your logic, how could you ever put Pride Shot on TV? Who's that for then, eh? Have you thought that one through? You haven't really thought that one to the end, have you? So I don't agree with that. In fact, I'd even say a lot of gambling sites, the ones I've been on, are really hard to actually get the account on, mate. It's not like you just sign up like you're signing up for a fucking Reddit account or something. You oftentimes, if it's crypto, by the way, you have to jump through a million hoops. You have to have the crypto wallet, and you have to have that exchange. You have to, by the way, for those, you sometimes have to actually like prove your fucking residence or like show your passport or your actual like housing agreement and stuff. So those are way harder than like a little kid isn't doing that. In fact, if you ever are an activist and you believe there is a dodgy thing where kids can sign up and gamble, etc., don't say that. Just show a video of you doing it. Show yourself going through like a VPN or something and sign up. And if you could do it, by the way, you would actually probably also help the industry in that way too, if you proved that it was like something dodgy that anyone can get into. So that's like the whole like normal gambling becoming sponsors. Then I'll just say there's also another obvious reason as to why these companies want it, which is almost what Dan was hitting at the end there, which is, first of all, as a company that's in a game and as tournament organisers, you are basically the ultimate dream partner, because in theory, you want the people who are fans of that team and that league to then also gamble with that. The activation's built in, isn't it? Like, that's already what you want them to do, is follow the sport and follow the games. And these are the people doing that and who have a vested interest in watching a certain team or a certain league. So you're the most obvious audience, which actually means also you'll get very good sponsorship deals, because it'll be seen as like a win-win for everyone and an obvious slam dunk. Then also, anyone who knows the history of gambling. Here's what's weird. Because I come from the UK, I have a totally different perspective. I grew up where there's a gambling shop on every street. And by the way, spoiler, the entire society is some dystopian nightmare of people who are all just gambling their house. That's like the one in thousands of people that ever has that problem. By the way, I've actually seen way less instances of that than, like, for example, I grew up in the same area. There were loads of people getting drunk and beating their wives and stuff. What are you talking about? That was ubiquitous. The gambling guy ruined his whole life was a very rare story that, yes, was shouted from the rooftops and is tragic, but it wasn't some like thing that was happening to everyone. And I can tell you, everyone's granddad, when I was a boy, went to the betting shop that was local to him, probably before he went to the pub to watch the game, and he put, not his whole house and mortgage, he put £1 on the game. And the reason he did it, DanDan, was actually because every week the game isn't always that interested in him. But I tell you what, if he puts £1 on it, now there's a reason to have a vested interest, isn't there? Now he has an extra reason to hope this shit game isn't 0-0, it's 1-0 at the end or something like that, you know. He does it essentially to actually improve his enjoyment of the game and to get what you call a sweat on, where you have an extra reason to care about the game. It's actually why, if you ever notice, in the UK especially, the ultimate gambling like law for boomers isn't like put massive amount of one game. It's to do the parlay, to do the one where you have to get like 8 bets right, but if you get them right, the accumulator goes so crazy, you're like a millionaire. It's like doing the lottery. You know you're probably not going to win it. You do it for the like, oh my god, I've got 6 of them right, what if the other 2? And then inevitably they don't, hence why the odds was like 4.8% that you never win that, you know. So people, and by the way, there's another thing. Everyone doing this isn't 7 years old. They go in knowing what's going on. They know they've lost the last time. They know if they're going to lose, etc. So grow up on that one as well. Everyone isn't some naive innocent that just came out the womb yesterday. You have to be 18 to do these things. And then also, 2 quick things to say. One, gambling, as was slightly alluded to there, is very different in Asia and certain other parts of the world than it is over here. Like, spoiler, anything in China where you can't already actually get action against things like Disney can't get action against copyright in fucking China, guys. Like, if you're not from China, you're fucked anyway. Then also, I've heard within China, it's just there's quite direct links to literal organised crime who will kill you involved in these rings. In the West, I've heard stories where, you know, someone was like a financier, like, you know, funding people to do match fixing, or someone was doing dodgy. I've never heard stories of people coming with literal machine guns and being like, fetch this game or you will die. Like, that has happened for real in Chinese esports. So I'll just say that is a whole separate issue. I'd even say some of that's potentially to do with how do they run the government there, or what are their laws about things. So I wouldn't worry about that. I would worry in this case about Europe and America, depending on which region you're from. And as far as I know, that stuff so far hasn't been involved. It's more amateurish, actually. And it's actually usually people from esports doing the match fixing. And then finally, one thing to say is, this. I wouldn't even bother mentioning match fixing in a Riot game, boys, if you know anything about Valorant, because essentially there was an enormous scandal where the genie was put back in the bottle this year in Valorant, where a very famous Counter-Strike player who was in Valorant for the last few years basically said, I am a whistleblower who has information there is match fixing happening in Tier 2 Valorant, and there are famous people rigging all these games. They've got all this, like, you know, screenshots and conversation, and essentially the implication was that, like, he was shut down by Riot and they didn't want to investigate that, because that's actually one of the problems with this topic. It's why I don't actually immediately poo-poo the idea people are against it. The problem here is this: nobody wants to the perception that there's match fixing. So unless it's totally ironclad and you're going to ban everyone, you'd rather pretend it isn't happening. Those are the two positions those companies are going to take. So that's a separate issue in itself. Anyway, I do agree overall. I'll summarize it by saying this: we actually don't need gambling sponsors. You know how I know? Because I was in esports for 24 years, mate. So here's the thing: if you all want to make €500 a month or €1,000 a month for playing video games, we don't need any of these sponsors. You know what? We can just have graphics cards and mice and headsets. But here's the problem, Peter. If people want to get paid €300,000 to play for an LFL team or $500,000 to play for an NA Academy team, we're going to need fuck tons of gambling sponsors. And do you know why, guys? Because we all lived high on the fucking hog, gambling our future, gambling by taking all that VC money. We took all that VC money for year after year after year. By the way, that could never have lasted forever. Eventually you have no equity left in your company. Literally all these companies did for years to make those crazy inflated salaries, which we're now trying to match by bringing these new sponsors in, and the Saudis, is people just essentially would take millions every couple of years and then give that money to, like, Hoodie, and then just go, well, shit, how do I get that back? And then go, oh, don't worry about it, get more money in 3 years. Like, that's actually how the fucking industry ran. So when you're in a clown-ass industry like that, where people are doing shit, I don't really let them go, no, wait a second, let's get responsible though, guys. Let's not do anything, like, let's not be financially irresponsible. Let's not gamble. Fuck you. You already gambled everything. You gambled everything in the whole bloody industry. In the end, when you're about to lose, now you have to go against your own principles, where you're the ones who all said you didn't want gambling, you didn't want the Saudis, and you have to let them all in. Yeah, that's the nature of, if you want to keep either exponential growth or the illusion that you can maintain a status that was essentially imaginary. It was based on actually telling investors to gamble that in the future the industry would be worth $1 billion, $1 trillion, whatever the number was at the time. So it's a complicated topic, but I do agree to bring it all the way back. These teams, as far as I know, I don't think people know how bad the rot has become in European esports, for example. I mean, put it this way, we've had a lot of guests on this show that come from the NLC, which obviously now is, like, in vogue because of Los Ratones. Mate, if you're not in Los Ratones, the point is they all say, like, some people get no salary, like they don't know what future there is for the league, etc. Like that. The real issue is that it's like, I feel like people don't know that bubble that popped, like, we're still feeling the ripples, like it's still affecting things now. So in this particular scenario, I'm open to the idea you don't have to have gambling sponsors, but I would just say to someone, suggest something else then. Tell us what other sector wants in, has all the money, we'll give you it tomorrow, and in theory, actually, whether you like it or not, would actually align somewhat with how you do the game anyway, because it is actually a fairly reasonable sponsor to have in that sense, in the same way as everyone understands why you want mice and headsets and all the things that we all use in the gaming space. So yeah, there you go. I think that's a succinct wrap. Go on.
I have me, it's just about fairness, because, like, I don't know how it is in, like, LEC and like NA nowadays, but you generally have, like, a 3-minute delay on the stream, right? But
yes.
the game is being played live.
Yeah.
And the way that gambling should work is you get your data from, like, some place, and then you try to make odds depending on, like, that data. But, like, let's say I'm a terrible human being, right? I'm the coach for a team, and I see the game live. I know exactly what's going to happen, and the odds are being placed, like, 3 minutes in advance, or, like, whatever. If you want to do, like, live stuff.
Yeah.
What if I just, like, grab the phone and just, like, pick up, and I just, like, give some hints of, like, what's going to happen, you know, to, like,
absolutely, that can happen,
like, website, you know. So I think just having it be more official, be more regulated. Like, I think especially in, like, EMEA, where things are, like, not really. It's kind of like, yeah, you can put a camera in the room and then you can, like, look at the players so they don't, like, do something shady or something. But, like, I mean, like, what about staff? What about, like, everyone in there? You know?
Absolutely.
Like, I'm not saying obviously that, you know, like, I'm not saying it's happening. I'm just saying it's very.
No.
Very
I mean, you have to be very cognizant of these factors if you bring this in. Of course, absolutely. It's an absolute downside that you have to match up in the equation. I agree.
No.
And I mean, it's about also creating, like, the additional layer of security, right? Like, just having people, like, just having a coach room, for instance, where you are all on camera, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Then that is valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, that's a pretty good first point. Okay, Peter, what is your first point?
My first point is going to be about the LEC last weekend. It's going to be about KC versus Vitality, and it's going to be about KC. And somebody who we often hide on this show is Targamas. And I'm going to be honest, like maybe they don't even win the series if Targamas doesn't have his Bard game that he has in game 2, where he hits multiple clutch ultimates. He does one that I think leads to them getting Baron. He does one which wins the key team fight where he catches Kazi, it's like a 5v5 fight, and it's in a 3v3, and Vitality in a really good position, and he catches Kazi and leaves the two frontliners, and the two frontliners die before Kazi respawns, and Casey win the game. So I'm going to say Targamas, and I'm going to say Caliste, who actually, after a couple of weeks where he's kind of, let's be frank, he's kind of ran it for a couple of weeks, pushing his limits, he actually played a really, really good series against Vitality, and I think Casey have looked a bit off the past few weeks, but this was definitely, I think Vitality of the two series we saw, so I'm sure we're going to talk about the second series too, but of the two series we saw, I think Vitality were the scarier of the lower bracket teams, and KC managed to negotiate a very difficult situation where they were 1-0 down, and if Targamas doesn't have that bad performance, maybe they're 2-0 down, right? So I think that it was, people say, oh, it's just Vitality, but I think that it was a strong performance, and it was a performance where Kana wasn't like the primary carry, and I think that is a good sign for Casey coming into next week, which is I think the game that really everyone like this to me, the next week's game, Casey versus Fnatic, is the single most important game in the entire season, and I think the fact that Casey's strength was their bot lane against Vitality is a good sign for them coming into that series, because they need to be better. If they're better than Upset and Mickey, it's going to be very hard for Fnatic to win. So that's my good point for the week. KC and their bot lane specifically.
What do you think, Dan?
I mean, whenever you get into these playoff scenarios, I think that very oftentimes it's very momentum driven, and players obviously have a lot of emotions whenever it comes to these things. I think that the second game was obviously a bit shaky, right? If you go 2-0 down, then the series looks a whole lot different. I think I've also heard a couple of things. I don't want to be able to start anything, but I think ever since Niski joined the team as well, there's been maybe some internal struggles when it comes to Vladi as well, where they're not really sure if they want him to start or whether they want Niski to kind of go there or whatever. I think that after this series, from what I've heard, the mood is a bit better, and that they're kind of regaining some confidence in their mid laner. So obviously that's going to help towards the next series as well. But yeah, I think it's just important to know how much momentum and really player feelings. Players are a very fickle thing when it comes in playoffs. Their emotions change a lot. They're very here and there. If you make some dog shit play in a game, but it turns out well, it's still great. So I think I mostly agree. I think Casey just Casey, I think they have a lot of fans. I think having a lot of fans and having a lot of support really helps in the games as well. You're kind of going to go in, you're like, oh, you won against Vitality, you're so fucking good, guys. You're just going to go in with all this, either real confidence or fake confidence. It doesn't really matter at this point, But I think that they have a pretty good chance against Fnatic, I'd say, to be honest. I think Fnatic are still better, but yeah.
By the way, I agree with the overall point as well. One of the most bizarre things about this last few weeks is you could actually argue that the two biggest games, in the one in Europe and in Korea, were these fourth place games. The one between Gen G and T1. If that hadn't have had the LPL final simultaneously, I think that would have been the biggest feud game this year. I'm not even joking, because the consequences are enormous. One team, even though T1 is in the play, and they might not get knocked out, they might not make the main event. I think the same thing actually for this European one. This is the angle that people seem to miss. Of all the fan bases, you have got the two fan bases where one of them is going to have to lose and neither are allowed to lose. Fnatic, the bare minimum is you have to make Worlds every year. Look, the fans want more than that, by the way. They want a title and they want all the fight. But you have to at least make Worlds every year, because that's famous that Fnatic always does. I think it's only season 6 or whatever that they didn't. They always make Worlds. So the idea you don't make Worlds is Fnatic, even with the humanoid swap. It's going to be unacceptable. Think of where the year began. You had the super team roster. You looked awesome in all these regulars. But so I think already your fan fans will go mental. And if you think that's bad, the only thing that levels that up is KC fans. Can you even imagine the meltdown that KC fans will have if their team comes fourth and doesn't make Worlds after making the first split final, winning the first title, going to the first international, making the final of that, and then you get no more internationals, not even fucking AWC, you don't get any more finals, and you just end the year in fourth place. Holy fuck. Like, you have to realise one of the key things in esports and life is storytelling. If you tell that story the other way around, it's an amazing story. If you start out fourth, and then, you're having a hard time, then the next split you're third, and, you're teasing that you can go further, and then in the last split, you go to the final, you win it from the low bracket, you go to the international. That's a fucking amazing story. The problem is, that's not life. Life doesn't work that way. Life's about people want progression. People want you to maintain standards. So I think it will actually be the end of the world if KC loses in this one. By the way, it also is actually a pretty bad sign for Europe, because everyone's fucking point on these shows after the first split is how KC's GM'd masterfully, and they brought their team from the RLs up to the LEC, and they've shown how you can build a contender roster, and they've leveled up each split, and now they're ready with these talents like Caliste to get to blah, blah. Well, that's all just gone, isn't it? If they come fucking fourth, and especially if you lose to Poby. Bro, can you even imagine telling someone after the first split, yeah, Fnatic just brings in Poby instead of Humanoid and wins? Like, again, it will be the meltdown to beat all meltdowns. Like, this will be like the KC version of like T1 fans sending trucks to the fucking venue, mate. Like, it'll be the end of the... Kamel will probably have to come out for real and just immediately make like some public statement to like quell the internal rioting or whatever. What are you going to say, Peter?
Well, I mean, I'm going to say, as somebody who did say all of those things that you said, Thorin, the one thing that I'm going to say from this series going into the finals is that, I've been a Caliste fan since before he was in LEC, right? Like, and what I will say about this guy is when the series is on the line, he has always had the best performances in his career, right?
He's so good. That's crazy.
Yeah, and what I will say is, if this is on stage and this is in front of fans, and he has a really, really great series, that will cement his legacy, and it will forgive what happened in the last split against Emcoy, right? Because let's be clear, like, I don't think it was really that much on him that they lost those two series to Emcoy. I think there were other people, but let's say this is the first time he's on stage and he chokes it. That will raise a lot of questions about who he is and about what his career trajectory is, right? So I think that this 3-4 playoff is not just about KC. I think it's about Caliste specifically, and that's because KC have made it about Caliste, right? From everything that they said about him at the start of the year. And what I will say is, he's the type of guy, like a Jojopian, who the more pressure you put on him, the better he seems to perform. So, and maybe he lost some of that pressure after they went to the first international. But I think that having shown this performance against Vitality, if he does not show this performance against Fnatic next week and his team doesn't win, then I think that is to bring questions in. But I will say I expect him to be the best player on the Rift next week.
But it has. I mean, that was mainly context for the big series thing. To bring it back to the good point, I do agree though. The actual main focus for me is the KC bot lane, because I have to say that one of the only factors actually in Fnatic that I don't think has failed this year is the bot lane. You could say Mickey X when he roamed through the bot lane or what he did in team fights might have been bad, but actually their bot lane has been awesome the whole time. It's why if you ask yourself this question, how did they throw every playoff game? They have to get ahead first, right? They have one lane that they can always win in. That is like the best bot lane. And in fact, I would say in this particular case, if KC's bot lane is even vaguely comparable, it's over for Fnatic. That's their main win condition right there. So yeah, I agree. This is like a massive one. If there's going to be a win for Fnatic, it surely comes from their bot lane wins, like step one, and then the other factors. Can you out jungle Yike? What will happen with the solo lane? But I agree that one comes first for me. And actually, I have to say, this split overall, one of the better Targamas splits. I do think. I actually think this is probably, unlike the rest of the team's decline, he sort of leveled his game up. Caliste was good the whole time. So I also think it's a banger matchup. It's a pretty fun one. So yeah. Good one. Let's go with that one. Right, for my good point, I have picked a very obvious one just because everyone else did all different points. Just an obvious one, which is I'm going to frame it this way. Since with KC, I just did the split on split, gradual decline and, mismanaged austerity or whatever the fuck. In this case, the team that did do what you would want as your dream storybook is G2. All they have to do now is win that final, and they have done literally the opposite of the fucking KC one. Think about this. Their year will only be progression. Their year will start with, they actually looked really shaky at the beginning of the year, hence the GM X comments and people going like, are they even going to do anything in the playoffs? Remember, in the first playoffs, they were supposed to be like the third or fourth best team. They then made the final, but then lost and kind of looked like, what the fuck? We got shocked by this. Like, rookies. So, yeah, it was only like fucking 1.5 rookies, but whatever. There were rookies in the team, which obviously no one can conceive of for G2. You don't go to first stand. That's also shocking. G2 always goes to international tournaments. Then you go to the next split. You're in the final again. This time you lose. Admittedly, that one's more like, fucking Cinderella run maybe by MCoy, etc. But you go to MSI, you're shit. But then you go to ESWC, you're much better at EWC. You come back home, you're actually pretty good in summer. Now in the playoffs, you're looking awesome. Everything's ticking up. Skumon looks at his best. Broken Blades at his best. Caps is better. Fucking, even Labrov looks better, for fuck's sake. That, which is saying a lot, by the way. I didn't think he's the obvious person who was going to get picked out the whole year. Even his level looks better. So actually, it looks like right now, G2 is going to, in my opinion, win the split. And when they win the split, they're going to go to Worlds actually in their best form of the whole year. And if you are, here's the difference. Whereas actually you will get the blame as the GM and the coaching staff of KC for we start at the top and go down. You get all the points if you're the GM, coaching staff and GM, because this is actually, beyond just winning all the titles, almost the best story. You've actually shown progression. You've shown that you've built on things, you've learned things, you've integrated people, you've combated your enemies. I actually think this is like, that's why I say it's the trajectory of G2 over the years. My good point. Like, what a great job. They've done and by the way, contrast them with people like Fnatic. Fnatic got to their third split and were like, right, kick out the legacy mid laner. Oh, fuck, what are we doing? Oh, better change that. No, that's a GM and the coach that are just scrambling there. They're just desperate for anything. Like, the G2 staff, they've stuck with whatever their plan is, and their plan has worked so far. So they go, the G2 trajectory. What do you think, DanDan?
Yeah, I mean, I personally just love G2 as multiple reasons. I think that they are never really the team. Like, it kind of like otherwise linked to my point, but like there's some EU teams that are always like going to be playing kind of like, what's Faker doing, what's Chovy doing and stuff like this. And G2 is always like, Broken Bait's like, I can't play Rumble, I can't play fucking Gwen, I'll just play my
Rek'Sai or whatever.
Warwick, Rek'Sai,
yeah, exactly.
And you're like, well, bro, what are you doing? And then it's so disgusting to draft against this, by the way. It's like he's always gonna have some like random pick there, like stored you're gonna have Hans Sama who's gonna be calling like everything from like bot lane. It's like, you fucking be here level 3 or I'm gonna fucking run it down. And the jungle's like, alright, my bad. So I think that they really have their own style. I think that they've always had their own style. I think that they're always on top of their like macro game. And I think that there's some teams that are kind of like T1 and G2 that I'll never ever count out, just because that they have such like it's like whenever you hear the stories about like Michael Jordan where he's like, oh, I'm just gonna get angry and I'm gonna get pissed and I'm gonna play well. It's like, how does this happen? It's just like this like winner's mentality. I think Caps has the same. I think there's just some people that just don't want to lose in those orgs, and they just, regardless of whether they're friends or not, whether they're no friends, they're just gonna act professionally. They're gonna play their best and they're gonna play their game. And I think that it's always players that are like willing to like listen to each other rather than just like, oh, I found this play that like this like LCK team did, let's just do that instead. It's like, no, I think that this is better because I play like this and this is how it's gonna work. Like when there was this like Grubs fight, for example, which happened in like a couple of like weeks ago in like regular split, and we were analyzing it as a team, and they do Grubs like no other team. They just like, oh, we have a front to back comp, let's go flank, and then it just makes it just works for them. They can just do things which other teams just don't do because they have a lot of understanding of other roles as well. So like I think AD carry understands very well what their jungler needs. I think mid laner like Caps probably understands exactly what the jungler wants. I think a lot of other teams which are pretty good, they just understand their own role. And I think in GT you can really see they talk to each other, they share their knowledge, and I think that's kind of what makes them like a really, really good team, apart from being exceptional players, right?
Sure. I think that's fair. I think the point you're making about like the flexibility it's not that they, so it's that they recognize when they're on neutral objectives. Like there's some teams in the league, they will always go in with one stance. But I think if G2 are playing front to back comp and they come in like flank, they understand that we are not in our perfect like position right now. But we can be flexible, and when we know what our ideal position to fight is, but we also know we need to get a fight. So we can't start in our original position. We need to but then they're able to switch like mentality in the fight. I think that's what I would say about G2. That's really, really impressive. I think that's that's something obviously that Caps and Hands are really good, but I don't know. Do you think that's a team thing, or do you think that's an individual player on the team thing?
Mm, I'm not sure, but it's like they do have a history of being able to do that. Perks like perk swapping, cap swapping,
Yeah,
four
okay.
people on the team playing Pike in Worlds. They all understand each other's champions. Like
Yeah.
I just realized it when I saw Hans was playing Zaya and Jack was playing Jarvan, and they were both
Yeah.
coming from top side, and then it was like I think it was like Yone plus like Rakan or something coming from like
Yeah.
mid lane. And then Jarvan has no flash, and there's a Nautilus. So Hans is
Yeah.
just like standing in front of the Jarvan. Jarvan is standing behind Hans on Zaya because he knows he's gonna like get hooked and then ult afterwards, and then he can go in afterwards. Like I don't see many teams doing this.
Yeah.
Like they're probably gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna flash the Nautilus hook, and Hans like, if he hooks me, we just win, even though
Yeah.
his team's not there. It's like just like little things like this, knowing how to be snappy and like knowing everything. I think especially with fearless format, like the people that know each other's roles the best are gonna have such a huge like advantage. So I don't know if it's a team thing. I don't know if it's a player thing. Maybe it's just like lucky, but they've had a pretty good history of playing like whatever the fuck they want whenever they want, like Perks Yasuo and then like Pike and
Yeah.
stuff like this when no one was doing it. So yeah.
I think that's for sure, right. And like I think I noticed it more with BB, but like the one thing that Broken Blade does really, really well is I think a lot of top laners when they're frontlining, they like stand in front of their AD carries like no matter what, right? I'm not saying you should never do it. Like if you're getting Zoe, obviously stand in front of your AD carry, right? But there are like sometimes where you are where you're the top laner, where you want to like create a zone for your AD carry to retreat back into, right? So they're the ones who step forward, and then they can retreat back into you,
Yeah,
and
you have
then
a
you
great space.
can, yeah, exactly, right. And that's something I would say that G2 are excellent at. I think it's something Koi are pretty good at. I think this is why Koi like have good team fighting. I don't think that their setups are particularly insane, but I think that they understand those kind of things pretty well. And I think yeah, the fact that on G2 that this kind of team fighting is not that easy to incorporate, I think is because it requires often a mentality switch, or it requires like an extra level of flexibility. I think is hard to do, and I think that the fact that Skewmond especially is able to do that now at a very high level, whereas I would have argued last year on BDS he was just being a typical frontline slash engage player who can also carry, but when he's playing a carry, he's on carry mentality. When he's on frontline, he's frontline mentality. But now that he has that flexibility, I think is a credit to G2 as a whole. I think Labov is still kind of the player that he was last year. I think that they're just more comfortable playing around Labov's strengths rather than expecting Labov to be Mickey. But I think that definitely Skewmond has developed those skills, and I think that's very impressive. That's what I would say. The interesting question is, who's going to get Rookie of the Year? Because the Thorin, since we're on the good point, obviously, Skewmond has been fantastic in
I think
summer.
he should be.
Okay,
It's between him and Caliste, right?
There's an argument. Yeah, it's him or Caliste, right,
Yeah.
for sure.
It has to be Caliste, no? Like this guy's.
Well, here's the problem. In general, I would probably agree, right? Because I do think probably laners should get like priority because you do carry the game. But I do also put it this way: I think it's closer than people realise. I think Skewmon was good even when G2 wasn't. Put it that way. Like it's and his main problem though is it's mainly the finals he failed in. Then again, Caliste was only in one, so you take your pick.
I think that's also like I don't even know when the votes, because obviously I'm not working anymore, so I don't know whether they vote now or whether they vote after the finals. But if I was voting now, I don't even know who I would vote for Rookie of the Year.
I could go both ways. I could hear good arguments for both.
Yeah.
I will just say it's convenient that fans would now say it's Caliste, because every fan in the history of the League of Legends would say whoever's on the better team would be the one that wins. So that is how every fan voted in the past, mate. I don't make the rules. Go on, DanDan, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I've heard Broken Blade and Caps talk in Champions Queue. I mean, I don't know, like, I'm not saying you could put any jungler in there, but I'm saying the game is very, very easy to play when you have two extremely vocal, like, top and mid. Like, it's probably the best top and mid in
fair enough.
Europe. Whereas Caliste, I feel like he's had such explosive growth. Like, what was he, like Div 3 or something? Like the previous year or something like this, or like Div 2 or like whatever. Oh wait, no, sorry. He played LFL, right? Okay. And now he's like the golden son, future of Europe. I just see him playing. He just like even in the Vitality game, I think he had no bad game in the entire series. He's just smashing, So yeah, I'd say it's him. But I also play in LFL, so I kind of have to root for my French bros, you know.
Well, here's the thing. You can sleep on Skewmont. You can sleep on the LPL. You can sleep on Rookie and Chovy as the best players to ever play League of Legends. But actually, a lot of people have a problem sleeping in real life outside of a metaphorical context. So that's where our other sponsor, Manta Sleep, actually comes in clutch, don't they? Because it's one of those examples of a product that I think is easy to sell, because it just actually nails all the areas that are annoying about if you don't have the product. So if you want to sleep at night, well, you better hope you're in an area where it's completely dark in your area. There's not all street lights. There's not loads of extra like light bleeding in. You have good curtains, etc. If you don't, by the way, what I've realised is the mistake we've all made is we try to control the whole world and make like a massive curtain or set all lights. By the way, anyone who's a gamer, you probably have your PC in the room with little lights flashing away on it, or the modem, or your phone's chart. So the real issue is this: we all miss the obvious thing. You don't need the whole room to be black. You just have to cover your eyes, don't you? And that is where the Manta Sleep nails it, because first of all, it's got these really comfortable pads. By the way, they actually tear off, so you can basically readjust them so they're the right place on your face, depending on if you have eyes really close together or really far apart. I'll leave all the jokes aside, just different people's faces, so that's really useful there. Also, unlike other masks you might use in the past, they've purposely made the material super breathable, so it doesn't make you like sweat loads because you've got material around your face, so it's not annoying. And also, this is actually the way the cops are made is so that it's essentially going around your eye like this. It's not touching your eye in any way. It's not annoying like actually even a plain mask is in that same sense. So actually it's mega. Like, it's an easy one to recommend. You can go to their website, check out all the different ones they've got, all the accessories as well as the sleep masks, and you can obviously get a saving by using our code. It's on the screen, BDLS, Best Damn League Show, to unlock 10% off your purchase. Right, let's continue on then, boys. So what is bad at the moment, DanDan? What aren't you liking?
I was going to talk about the Esports Nations Cup.
Okay.
I think, I mean, I don't know how much info we have on it and stuff, and it's like November 2026, and I think it's kind of like the idea that a whole bunch of esports are going to be involved, and you're gonna kind of like go in there, and I just don't really know what the relevance of that is, because I'm guessing they're trying to make like a World Cup. But okay, I'm just gonna like paint a pretty picture for you. It's gonna be Prime Chovy, Prime fucking like Keen, it's gonna be like Ruler, and then we're gonna spawn in the Netherlands, DanDan, Keyrave, Watchdog, Febivin, fucking random on like 80 carry, and like Advien, and like two of
exactly.
like two of us haven't played. I'm gonna get my I'm gonna get reamed out in 7 minutes. I'm gonna look like an absolute fucking disgusting player, and I don't really know what the point is. I don't know like how much integrity it's gonna have. Is it just gonna be like, oh, China against Korea? Oh, you're just gonna like honestly just grab the entire Genji roster and just slap it in there, you know, and then that's kind of like it. So I don't really know what the point is. Maybe in like other esports it's gonna be useful, but in League there's not really any countries that can really compete. Like maybe Spain right now with Koi, but then again you just slap the entire Koi team in, and it just like who's not
The mid laner.
Spanish in Koi? Yeah,
Jojo, it's going to be pretty rough for Spain.
Yeah, Jojo. I don't know. Like you put in like
Look.
I don't know. You just like have Razork lane swap or whatever, and you like put Razork mid or something, you know. But it's just like I don't really know what the point is. You have your best teams anyway. It's like I mean, like football World Cup, I get it, you know. But is it just gonna look like San Marino versus like Germany or something every single round? So and who wants to see that, you know? Like the Netherlands doesn't even have any fans, you know. Like they all just play. Like it's only like the like football teams. They have like Ajax and stuff. They have like FIFA, and maybe that has like 500 viewers. That's it, you know. Like there's a lot of countries which they just don't care.
I'm going to go the other way actually for this. Okay, so firstly, you're correct. Like, I mean, the final is going to be China versus Korea. We all know this. But for me and like the other teams, because they've done this in East Asia, right? And like they had, do we have to call it Chinese Taipei? Like, they have Taiwan, well, Chinese Taipei. I don't even know what they're classified as in the East Asia.
It depends if China's running the tournament as far as I know, mate.
Well, okay, so there will be Chinese Taipei. Okay, so Chinese, we'll call them by the names of the tournament. Chinese Taipei, Vietnam, and Japan, right? And then when Japan was like a separate league, right? And those teams would compete, and they would get absolutely blasted. Like they would get destroyed in the most utterly humiliating way you could possibly get destroyed. But it was always very fun to watch the third place playoff between like Chinese Taipei and Japan, or Vietnam versus like I think Vietnam even made the final once because China and Korea were on the same side of the bracket, right? So to me, firstly, it's not interesting for those reasons. It's interesting to me, like the matchups I'm interested in are like the US versus Germany, or like Spain versus Canada, or like Denmark versus
Sweden
Vietnam.
or something, whatever. Pick one, yeah.
Right? Like, so I think those are going to be interesting ones. But yeah, let's make the only way that it's not China versus Korea in the final is if they're on the same side of the bracket, in which case one of them is coming first and the other one's coming third because they're winning the third place playoff. Okay, so in that regard, it's not that interesting. However, the thing that I'm going to say that is really, really fun about this tournament is the complete and utter shit show that there is going to be when all of these rosters are decided and all of these coaching staff are decided. Because for Korea and China, it's very, very simple, right? They have their esports organization, they have Kesper, they have whatever, they will pick these orgs, and even then it's a really freaking controversial, right? When Kesper leaves out a certain player, there's always, oh, what have they done behind the scenes that we don't know, or were they not patriotic enough in this kind of a way? And that's when you have like a set panel of people.
Or did the coach pick his own player and stuff like that?
Exactly, yeah. And in this case, this is when you have a panel of people that are considered, okay, Kesper has issues in the past, but they are considered generally neutral and generally competent, right? Can you imagine who's going to decide when there is a controversy about...
I'll give you an obvious one, Peter. Should El Yoyo or Razork be the Spanish jungler? There you go. That's a civil war right there on the internet. Because you can make an argument for both, yeah. But if it turns out Melzet's the coach, you can see where they can have a nightmare. Exactly.
Or even better, okay, so now you've decided, and you're like, let's say because Fnatic don't win, okay, so it's clear that Koi deserve, okay, now you have to have a mid laner. So are you going to have somebody who is a first, like he plays mid laner in LVP, he's like a really, really solid mid laner, maybe not the best mid laner in the league, but he's a solid mid laner. Are you going to play him, or are you going to role swap somebody into that role who doesn't play that position, who hasn't played that position for the entire year, but you're going to go and put him in that role because he has a better name?
I can guarantee you, Razork is going to say, I mean, I know him, right? I play with him. He's like, bro, I can play fucking Z mid and shit like this. You're gonna have Razork against Trophy, and it's just gonna be like, no offense to my boy, but it's lost.
I mean, what I will say is the end to so for me, this tournament, I know how the results are going to go, right? Like, I'm interested to see how Brazil would do against Vietnam, or Brazil against Denmark, or Brazil against US, right? For me, like that kind of thing is kind of interesting to me. I'm interested to see how Vietnam, as somebody who likes these tier 2 nations and has no illusion that they're ever going to beat any of the top ones, for me, that's kind of interesting. For UK, like, there's zero chance for you. Like, I don't even have, like, are there any even British players? Like, Maxwell doesn't play anymore. Like,
Alfari doesn't play anymore. Like, they're all gone, man.
Like, Kasing plays still, so, like, it's literally, like, Kasing and four others, right? Like, so I there's literally zero hope for the UK, so I can sit there as a neutral. But the fun thing about this tournament is not going to be the tournament itself. It's going to be the 2 months that lead up to it, and the decision that is going to be made for who has the power to pick these teams and who has the power to define the fate of people, where I don't even think, like, most fans or, like, every GM, I think some GMs can, but, like, every GM can detect who is better between two players which are very, very closely related, right? And obviously, the teams that go are going to get destroyed, and then there's going to be a massive fallout because there's going to be controversy over the selection, and then the results are going to be bad, and then there's going to be a fallout afterwards. And if you are, like, somebody who's interested in League, that is going to be really, really fun. Like, that 2.5 months is going to be really, really fun. Competitively, I completely agree. Like, competitively, just let China and Korea go and play it. And then, like, do like the Nations Cup in football, right? Like, you have, like, four teams in League A, 4 teams in League B, 4 teams in League C, and that kind of thing. And then you have an interesting tournament, right? Like, I would watch a tournament between Germany, Denmark, Vietnam, and US,
I mean,
right?
That's cool because it's at least like somewhat evenly matched, but I have no chance. I'm gonna get destroyed, The
problem with that is Peter was too naive there because he just made a massive category error. You're in League of Legends, friend. In League of Legends, you had to pretend for like 10 years that actually the number 1 seed from Europe could be identically good to the number 1 seed from Korea. That's how the seeding was done for like a decade in League. You had to pretend that you can't know that Korea's better. So I'm sorry, Peter. How are you going to make that group, mate? How are you going to have that group with Korea and China? How dare you imply Spain isn't as good as Korea Korea and China. You know what I mean? So first of all, there's that nightmare. Secondly, I'm amazed I haven't made this video yet. It's probably just too obvious. I've mentioned it too many times. I already saw this. If you ever followed Counter-Strike, we had this tournament in both CSGO and CS. In CS, it was called the World Cyber Games. You had to all be from the same country. In CSGO, it was called the World Esports Games. It was WESG, also took place in like China or whatever. And essentially, it was like an Olympics of gaming. We had to be like, I can tell you, first of all, it worked way better in World Cyber Games in 1.6 because back then all teams were national pretty much, beyond, like an Austrian bloke plays in a German team or like, fucking a Canadian plays in an American team. Aside from that, everyone was from the same country. So you could make that vaguely work. And as you can already imagine, it's just a worse version of the tournaments we already had because you have the normal teams that have the 5 players. But then, for example, yes, when Mouse has a Turkish and an Austrian player, they're just worse. Like that was the best German team if people don't know. That just makes their team worse at the tournament. So you end up going, this is just a worse version of the tournaments I already have. But we don't even live in that world anymore. We're more like the world of what CSGO and CS2 is, which is everyone's an international roster. Well, now it's even worse because now, again, you can't make the team easily. Now you're going to have this nightmare like it's who's getting called up to the national squad, what's the reasons why, what are the biases, it should be this guy, should be that. So you get all that shit, by the way. Meanwhile, by the way, that's actually an area where automatically China and Korea have an advantage because another reason their process won't be as bogged down by that is they're going solely for the patriotic angle of like, this is about our country winning. That's not what the people in the West are thinking. They're fighting for their spot. Like El Yoyo's not going, well, I actually think Razok's better than me, so you take the spot. He's going, I want to fucking play. I think I'm better than Razok. They won't be on the patriotic tip on that one. It'll just be like politics and who knows who. So that'll be a nightmare. Then secondly, MCOY is actually the best reason why this tournament would suck. Because notice when Dan started making the Korea team. By the way, you can literally make like 5 rosters out of the Korean and Chinese teams that would all win this tournament over any other team, not China or Korea. It's actually nuts how good their teams are. Just try. I know, look, the joke is already people like fucking Genji basically have a super team. You could just send that whole 5 team. But I assume they do the rules where you can only have max 2 or 3 from one team, and you'd have to blend them. But anyway, their teams are all like, they would look like Hall of Fames in all their teams. Meanwhile, the best, most obvious one that is not from Asia would obviously be MCOY, right? Because they've got 4 Spanish players. Look, again, you might not be able to use all 4 because maybe there'd be 3 limited rule to make people not pick the same team. But even if you could send all 4 MCOY, the joke is there isn't even a Spanish mid laner vaguely competitive, so you'd immediately have no team. Like, that's the most important carry role in the game. So you've already invalidated that. Like, again, who the fuck from Spain is now matching up against Chauvet and Knight? Good luck. Even the best Chinese and Koreans can't do that. It's fucking impossible. So I actually think I'll give my own resolution. Here's what you all want, but you're not asking for it because you've followed their premise. No. You don't want the Olympics or the World Cup. You want the European Championships, you idiots. The European Championships would actually be balanced because, then you would have Slovenia would have like fucking Nemesis and Mickey X, and that would make them like way better than they should be. But then at certain carry roles, they'd be shit. Then, Spain would have all this roster, but they wouldn't have the mid laner. Then Denmark would have Caps and a couple of other people, but they'd be lacking it. That would actually be a fire tournament. That would be interesting. How hard could Caps carry? Could Mickey X make enough of a difference? Could some fucking, I don't know, could Irrelevant be good again? And Germany sort of be half decent, and so maybe the prime players are better than people. That's an interesting competition. The competition when you airdrop in like the Avengers and fucking and the Monstars, which is like China and Korea, that's terrible. That's like a bad exhibition tournament. Like that's like when T1 flies over to play LFL teams. You know what I mean? Like that's garbage, mate. That sounds fun until you actually run down the practicality of what it would be like. And I'm sorry, there's not even a millionth of a chance that any of these European teams would beat the Korean team. It'd be so absurd if they did. It'd be so absurd.
There is 0 chance, but I will say, because I actually watched the Asia Games 2 years ago, Vietnam, it was best of 3, so it's not even best of 5, right? Okay, let's leave it.
By the way, you should probably make it best of 3 to make it more brandy, yeah. Okay.
Like if Vietnam went 1-0 up against China in the 3rd place playoff, and maybe Vietnam can
or Taiwan. Taiwan's the other one, yeah, obviously, sure.
For Europe, there's like literal 0 chance, right? But like maybe Vietnam or maybe Chinese Taipei can can get an upset. But then why even have this tournament? Just have the Asia games.
No, and like I say, I would actually, for real, I genuinely, it would make more sense, by the way, just as two different competitions, have an Asia games like that, and then have where basically everyone who was in China and Korea just competes for bronze, but that would still be an interesting match, like Peter says, and then have a European Championship. The European Championship would actually work, boys. That would actually functionally work as you'd want. It'd be more comparable to football, where yes, you have the stronger countries, but like Serbia can beat England in theory. That's not impossible. Like that like the difference is this would be like asking Serbia to beat like the fucking world 11 of football history. Like it's not going to happen, is it? Like they're not going to beat like Zidane passing a Ronaldo. Like you've asked too much on that one, haven't you? You've got to make it reasonable. Because I'm with you guys. It sounds exciting when everyone thinks of like. Here's what everyone does. The real reason I have to make this video is because you have to actually show people what the teams would be. The problem is when you do the like quick math in your head, quick maths, you just go like, oh, I can think of 3 good players. Slovenia is the best example, by the way, because you can get like a good mid, good idiot. There's like 3 or 4 players they can put, but you can never make 5. You never make 5 that would ever get in a server with the Chinese team. You know what I mean? Anyway, I think that's a good point. We covered it well there. Peter, what is your point?
My bad point is that I had faith in GX. Oh, I don't know why I had faith in GX. Before the show, I went back and I looked at my pre-season predictions. So I did like a tweet thread at the start of the year where I basically predicted where every single team would finish at the end of the year. And basically... Did
you have them third? Where did you have them?
Oh, GX? Oh, I had GX 6. I had
6? Okay, fucking hell, right. Okay.
At the start of the year, I had GX... Actually, no, I had GX 7th. 6th at the start and then 7th at the end.
Okay.
And Vitality, I had Vitality and GX basically 6, 7. Basically, kind of the predictions were basically pretty close, except I had KC slightly low. I had KC just 4th, like behind the top 3, and then I had BDS like a lot higher than BDS deserved to be. And then basically everyone else was actually kind of in the right order, which was kind of surprising when I look back. But the one thing that I said on my GX thing is, do not let rumors of scrims or like regular season cloud your judgment about this team, because when things get to playoffs, like I said something like especially with this team, don't allow your judgment to be clouded by their regular season or their scrims. And this is exactly what I allowed to happen, because GX look really, really good in regular season. You hear all the rumors that they're stomping in scrims. Like they have like a really good performance against kind of a no-hoper team, right, in the next round, and you're like, oh, maybe they can beat Fnatic. And then they have a really close game. To be honest, they should probably have won that first game.
Sure.
And then they lose the first game, and their mentor is gone. And like, it's just done, right? And you know, maybe if they won their first game, they could have front run for the entire season. But like, this team, I don't even know if you can fix it with a sports psychologist, right? Like every single time this team has had a really important result on the line, they've bottled it. And like, I don't even know what the solution is. Like, to be clear, in the upper bracket, in regular season, if they come top 2 in the league, they automatically go to Worlds, right? They're 1-0 up against MKOI. They're like in a ridiculously strong position, game 2, where if they beat MKOI, they're guaranteed to go to Worlds. They throw from like a 7 or 8k advantage and then get stomped game 3. Same thing happens in this Fnatic series, right? Like they're in a really good position, they throw it, and then they just have no rebound capability. They have no ability to like come back, like recover mentally. And like, I don't know what the solution for this GX roster is, but like my bad point is that I allowed myself to get fooled by by thinking, oh, that this is surely not going to happen the 6th time in a row when it's already happened like so many times this season. You know, surely this time is going to be different. But no, it wasn't different. And like the fact that I had faith in them makes me even more disappointed, like with how stupid I was to have faith in them in the first place. So like, I think this roster is good. I think everyone on this roster, on, you know, if we're playing Football Manager or League of Legends, you know, Manager or something like this, all of these players have good stats. But the problem is that when the first thing goes wrong, you know that they're going to collapse. And like, I'm not even sure what the solution is, but it just kind of makes me sad because, you know, this team and Vitality, like, had a chance to challenge the top 4 this year, but they just didn't because of various, like, non-gameplay related things, right? And that to me is just sad. And like, GX this year, you know, you look at I think they're going to have like fifth 3 times, and people are going to look back and think, oh, you know, it wasn't a bad year, because considering, you know, the history, like Excel have had some pretty rough years, and Giants, when Giants win the league, had some pretty rough splits, but it could have been so much more. And like, that's my bad point. Like, it's just, it's just frustrating because it could have been so much more, and like people will probably not even remember how close they were in 2 years, right? Or even in 12 months, right? So yeah, that's my bad point of the week. GX choking it. Like, is it even choking if it happens 6 times in a row? GX meeting the expectations, right? Is my bad point of the week.
What do you consider like out of game struggles? Because I haven't really looked too much into their like psychology and stuff like this, and I haven't
Um,
really heard a lot of rumors.
Not pure. This is not from anything I've heard behind the scenes. This is just from like last year when Fnatic were throwing those leads. Like, let me give an example, right? Like Jackie's really, really talented player, generally has suffered in playoffs. Noah and Jun, players that on Fnatic, like when I went back and watched those Fnatic games against G2, the people who are most often throwing in those games are Noah and Jun, right? Like they're just out of, they have bad positioning at really key moments in the fight. Sure, there are a lot of big parts why Fnatic have their big leads, but when it comes down to close the games in the high pressure situations, they're not able to do it. Lot, I don't really have any opinion. Like Lot has just met my expectations this year. But like the people in them on the bot side of their map, like really, really seem to struggle with pressure. And I mean, I don't have a solution for it. I just think it's like unfortunate that they're not meeting their expectation, right? And to me, it looks very clearly like this is a mental thing because they would never be in those positions. Like especially the MCOI. I remember the MCOI series from regular season where they should have just closed that series out 1-2-0 and guaranteed top two, and then they would be at Worlds, right?
Mm.
Or like one best of five away from Worlds, right? And then to see their year end in this way is just sad, right? I'm not like criticizing. I'm not saying Gilotto should be fired. I'm not saying Jackie should be kicked out of the league or something, right? What I'm saying is that this team has so much potential, but the fact that they're not able to meet up to it makes me sad because this is a team that, like, in regular season, they're definitely like they can. There's strong arguments to be made that this is a top four team in the league. But in playoffs, I don't think they've even had a single strong playoff performance against a team that is close to their level, right? Because we're not going to count the bottom three teams in the league, as being realistic contenders, right?
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there's a lot of fairly exciting players to watch. I really like watching Jackie's is like
Yeah.
train like an animal against Caps in like one game, and I just love seeing it because it just really shows some confidence. I think that when it comes to like the difference between nowadays and like back in the day as well is if you are already a team that like struggles a bit mentally as like because that like as you said that that first game was like GG, right? Like it was like over.
Yeah.
And then if you lose that, it's obviously quite hard. I think it is even harder nowadays because you have the fearless format, and it's
Mm-hmm.
very easy to kind of like come back. Like I remember when I was playing, I knew that there were a range of 5 champions I was going to play at an absolute max if they were like banning me out or something like this. Now you have to like kind of like resort, especially if you're dropping to 4 or 5, and enemies have done their scouting, which I'm hoping that they have. You're gonna be dropping to first of all not your favorite champions, but you're gonna be playing like game 1, 2, and then you're gonna be in a more awkward spot in the game as well, which is going to give you like less confidence if you're already not confident, and then you have to drop to like like a B tier champ or something. Like let's say someone like first picks Gwen, but then your bot lane doesn't have the like champion pool. You have to like match bot lane like on 3 or something, and then you have to play like I don't know, like you have to play some like B tier champ against like Prime Gwen on like
Mm-hmm.
top lane. Then you're already not gonna be like very like confident. So I think it's already harder for players that are not extremely experienced or have had a lot of experience winning. It's very easy to like come back if you're used to winning. I, like I remember when I'm winning a lot and I lose a game. I don't give a fuck. Like let's win the next one. Nowadays it's like okay, I've had a history of like not really winning, and now I also have a history of like losing as the game goes on, and now I also need to be put on like a harder champ or like a champion that I'm not as comfortable on, because in scrims you kind of just get whatever champs you want, and then like official day comes and it's like what the fuck, I have to play like mark on top or something or like whatever. So I think it's just harder for teams like this that they're not used to winning, and then they're also getting put into harder spots comparatively to what they were used to before. So I think it's just a very difficult situation. I don't know if a psychologist would help this or winning is the best medicine at this point. So yeah.
It's funny that in the modern day, people can very easily see now the difference between having like a stage match and someone getting nervous. But for some reason, they always make this weird mistake, I think, if you've never like been around pros, which is they really do think that like, well, it's in the same studio, so it's the same as no, somehow your brain knowing it's the playoffs does change it. Knowing things like the stakes, like we're eliminated or our year's over, these things do play on people's minds and they are sort of lurking in the background. Absolutely, yeah. Same as the reason why, like, I'm not joking. I know it'll sound mad to a fan, but I do think anytime you ever see someone who's like a choker, you know, where they lose the finals every time, it's nearly always that you had one really bad close one early that like ruined you and then you feel cursed after that, basically. And I always say, if you could go back in a time machine and make that guy win like that one game 5, he might not even choke all the rest. Maybe he'd like win half the time, or maybe then he'd think he was a win. It just sets people's expectations so differently. So unfortunately, GX as a team, that's one area where they, as Peter pointed out, they've never made that breakthrough this year. They've never had the single playoff run where they looked good. I mean, the joke is, you could even argue a team that at this point in the season is irrelevant, like BDS was in better spots. They had times in the first split playoffs where they were like mixing up with Fnatic and stuff and almost beating them. Like some of these teams even have had glimpses of like, oh, maybe we're like decent. Even Heretics has had times where they could believe we could overperform, we could win. GX has never even played to par, because I do think on paper they were supposed to be a firm 5th to 6th at least. And then there was the potential of, as they hinted at themselves, if any of the other big dogs fall, we're right there to sort of capitalise. It turns out they're not, unfortunately. And I do think if you look at their roster, it's a bomber. I'll tell you first and foremost why I had no faith in GX, unfortunately. Because the player who actually has been the best player for GX the whole year is the infamous Noah. And bro, that's one area he's never improved. I do think going to GX is better, because it's like fucking Jack Grealish going to Everton. There's not the same pressure. You get to play properly. People like you as a good player. But here's the downside. You haven't actually proven you're world-class mates. Like, when you get in problems, like in Fnatic, these moments are like his games of Fnatic. He would just choke. In the big game, something would always get to him. He'd be off his game slightly, or he'd underperform, or it looked like he collapsed as the series went on. That problem still looks like it exists, unfortunately. And again, I don't know. This is one area I think is really unreasonable. I'm sick of fans acting like sports psychologists and mechanics who come in and go, you need your carburetor changing there, love. I fixed it for... It's the human mind. How the fuck is someone going to take a video game player and go, have you had this problem for years in other teams? Well, my job's sports psychologist, so... Fixicus, Brainicus, and then, he just minds brought. If that worked, by the way, you do realise people like Chovy have choked. You do realise, like, fucking, like, some Peanut chokes now when he's one of the greatest players to ever play League of Legends. Like, that issue is beyond the pay grade of a fucking coach, even a performance coach, etc. They just do what they can, and they work with you and try and get... Here's the thing, that's why I think things like performance coach should be... the better term is support staff. That's a great fucking term. That's how you want to... They can do what they can to support you, but at the end of the day, you have to do some of it yourself, you know what I mean? You have to make the breakthrough yourself. And if you do, by the way, you also get a lot of the props, not just the performance coach, etc. And I'll tell you, the reason I bring that up is it is a notorious problem in the esports industry, particularly LEC, that you get these stories about these performance coaches where they talk like that guy is healing lepers, bro. Like, oh my God, you should see the guy from the other team, though. He's working. We should get him. It's like, you might have a different type of player, mate. That might not work. So anyway, I think that already screwed them. That Noah, their best player probably this year, most consistent player, looked like he just played way worse in the playoffs. Then I'll add in, I also do think the hope of this year, if you're a GX fan and you were envisioning them being better when they made this roster, was Jackie's, because he looked fucking dope last year. The GX last year was dog shit, but he was fucking smurfing. Some of those, like if you gave him like a mid-Zeri in some of the last year, mate, he might just carry the game against anyone. Like, that was really exciting if you're a fan. This year, it looks like he's just regressed, if anything, mate. Like, they've got all these other pieces that are clearly being, like, heavily coached as how to play. And for some reason, this guy never seems like he's connected to the fucking rest of the team. Like, I don't get it. And so then even when you get things like, I think the lot guy's fine, especially for this team, Isma actually looks like he's being well coached in what his role should be. The pieces are sort of there. They just don't ever come together. And the issue is, especially, like I said, to bring it back to the choking thing, if you want to say what is, like, the team identity, unfortunately, the team identity has been... Make the stakes as low as possible, like a regular season game. We can get this close to beating anyone. Put us in the playoffs, and suddenly the gap just extends, and we're also run. So I agree. I agree. Put it this way: it's better to put this in bad than ugly, in my opinion. It is just bad. Notice I didn't put the blame on the coaches and the GM. I think it's also one of those ones where you couldn't know it would play out this way. You know what? You've gambled and kept the players for the whole year. It just didn't work out. You didn't get the turnaround you hoped for.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would say that there's one thing, like from being on teams. So I've worked with players who have kind of reputations for struggling under pressure. I want to be a bit careful about saying the term chokers, but like who struggled under pressure a lot. And one thing that has always helped, and I think the two players I worked with in my career who were the best at that were like Kobe and Impact. And those players, when it was like the pressure was down and they could see people on their team were just like really struggling or nervous or something, they would like be something like, oh, just you know, just they would make really really strong way of saying, I'll just give it to me, or like give me this pick and I'll for sure I've got this, don't worry
Oh,
about
you
it,
give
right?
them confidence by
Keep
doing
the
that, right?
atmosphere light.
Right.
It's not quite like going and putting your arm around the player, right? But it's like, you see the guy's nervous and you're just like, don't worry about it. Like,
Yeah.
we've got this. Just next game, they banned this out that we're going to get this, and then I'll just 1v9 just like in a not in an arrogant way, but in a reassuring way, right? Having that person who, if you're struggling from nerves, you can just say, oh, like that guy, I believe in that guy, and they put themselves out there into that position. And again, I don't know what things are like behind the doors in GX, but I feel that they have nobody like that on their team. Partly because those players are rare, right? But also partly because it's very clear that that as the series goes on, that they're all like lost in their own minds, right? Whereas sometimes just having somebody like that who's a little bit cocky is the wrong, a little bit like confident can like help be a rallying point for the other people, right? So that's what I would say from that.
Okay. Right, let's roll on then. I will do for my bad point. I've actually got a pretty simple one, but I haven't heard anyone talk about this. Mate, I'm going to pick as a bad point. Bear in mind, I just said for my good point, G2 is the best team in the league, great progression, awesome job by everyone involved, all the players peaking, etc. The worst thing if you're a G2 fan is they have had, when the final comes, they will have had 14 days without an official game. So that means all they did in 14 days was scrim if that's what they were doing. And then you have to travel to another country as well. The reason why I'll just set out very quickly why I think that's terrible is, first of all, I actually think this is one area where the West is way worse than like the top Koreans and Chinese. I've always thought the real thing that made it impossible to win Worlds from the West is when you get to the semi-finals and it's like a week between the games like it used to be back in the day at Worlds. Everyone else in the West is terrible at figuring out how to play non-official games and play scrims and not like get warped by the scrim results or have to play shit teams. Like the problem when you get deep into tournaments, by the way, is it's not as much an issue in like Europe because you've got all the EMEA and stuff running, so you can still get scrim partners. If you're at Worlds and you're in the semi-finals, there are literally two teams you can practice against, the other two semi-finalists on the other side of the bracket. That's it. That's all you've got. You're going off some weird hyper-compressed scrims world where you have to try and take from that what is the real data, what's the fake data, what's just them, what is in the game, and also having the week between, I feel like just cools people off. I'm amazed that the Koreans can still hit their peak level in the final. I think that's actually props to them, but we haven't figured it out. So I think it's terrible that your best team in Europe has 2 weeks with no games. They're only playing scrims, and then I do think that there is a factor of like ring rust. I think you need to play every, let's say like at least every week, at least every 3 to 4 days probably, to stay like in shape, because scrim isn't the same. It doesn't have the same pressure. It doesn't force the same results. Even like I suggested there, you can exist in it. There's legendary stories of people, the classic Hooney fucking Lucian top. You exist in some bizarre scrim bubble that you think's reality. Then you play a team that wasn't in that bubble, and you find out not only was that not reality, but you weren't even playing the right picks. I mean, the joke in the LCK, if people follow this split, is most people assume that T1 and Gen G just scrimmed each other before their upper bracket matches, where they both lost to underdogs, and probably were just in their own alternate meta and thought they knew what was best, and then they came in and got outdrafted up the arse. Like, it was ridiculous. These are the two best teams in the world. So I think like this actually, if put it this way, if G2 was to fail and look way worse in the final, I wouldn't make this the main reason, but this would be one reason, in my opinion, why they'd suddenly look way worse. Thoughts, DanDan?
Yeah, I think finding good scrim partners is like a big problem, especially like also in Europe, by the way, because I remember last playoffs we scrimmed G2 like once or twice, and we were pretty good in scrims. Like we have some like everyone's challenger, and I mean it's still no contest in them, right? It was like 4-1 or something. They're just like there's no like the only way you're gonna get better at something is if there's some for like resistance.
Yes.
That's going to like challenge you, right? And sure, you can get challenged in the laning phase. Mid game comes, their macro is so much better than what any like ERL team can ever possibly get to, which is just completely like normal, right? And then like, what do? You get the wrong takeaways. Maybe you don't spot something which other really good teams would have done, and then you kind of get away with it. You get a bit more lax, and then come game days, there's gonna be a team like whoever that team is, is going to come in. Tons of like momentum. They've actually played stage. They're extremely confident because you've had games earlier to closer to the actual date. So yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a problem. Like there are even like sometimes moments where you have to like scramble some like people together. You know, like I've heard like Fnatic had to like scrim like leader and like
Right. Like a
leader and
McDonald's
co,
mix, basically, all those types of things.
Yeah, it's like let's just get 5.
Right.
Let's get the squad together and just like scrim these 5 guys who are good like individually and have never played together. Yeah, you're gonna get a good 15 minutes after Herald. Boom, one team fight.
Sure.
GG. So yeah, it's a problem. Like I don't know how like LCK teams do. I don't know. Like I know the Chinese teams, they have a very different culture to scrimming. They kind of just go like just scrim until the game is like dog shit and then just like FF or something and then just do fast, no reviews. Maybe that's the way to do it in the Worlds because you don't really want to improve. You kind of just want to you kind of just want to get like the most amount of games in and just improve on the things that you can improve on fast and just like band-aid very fast. So maybe that's a way to do it. I don't know.
Yeah. I agree. Just on the scrim thing, like, I mean, I don't think any region, aside from, well, I mean, NA does it a bit, right? But I think Europe is the one that spends the most time reviewing of any region that I've ever seen. Like, the reviews, there's some teams where they'll review for 45 fucking minutes, and I'm just like, you're just sitting there with your players, obviously, like, we're finishing our reviews in 15 minutes because we have a timer that, you know, this is just something I used to do as a coach. We have like a timer, which is we are not going over 15 minutes. Sometimes we go to 20, but you know, essentially there's a timer. You know, if you want to have a long discussion, have it in the break or something, and then the other team's like there for 45 minutes, and we're just like hating our lives, you know. So I think that's a very EU thing. I think I've seen a couple of NA teams do it, but basically it's a very EU thing. But yeah, like just to go on the 2 weeks on the 2 week thing, yeah, I mean, I hope that this scheduling is just because Riot is afraid that because this is the first time they've done, like, because of how important the series, this roadshow has to be, they don't want to take a risk that, you know, maybe their equipment is not properly set up in time. But yeah, like, to me, it just kills all the hype. Like, just leaving aside what it's going to do for the teams that have to play on stage, the fact that we have this 2 week gap right now is really, really, like, I mean, it really, really like destroys the hype for me, and I was really, really looking forward to some other games before now, right? So that's what I would say for this. My only question though is whether it affects it gives a team an advantage coming from lower bracket.
I think you could argue it does. Put it this way, in Counter-Strike, I can tell you there's a very divided community. Some people think it's better to be the team that plays the warm-up match, especially on those days like in LEC where you do the lower bracket the day before the final. Some people think it's better to be in shape. It's a divided opinion.
Oh. Yeah, it's interesting.
I think it is from at least from personal experience. It's like I don't know what the statistic on it is, but you definitely feel a lot more confident.
Put it this way, the obvious reason why there's an advantage coming from the upper bracket is in theory you're the better team because you won the upper bracket. And then secondly, in League there's an extra advantage, which is in Fearless you get to see an extra series of people playing the whole potentially 5 games. That might help a little bit, but I don't know. I think it depends on what type of team you are.
I think it doesn't matter. Go on.
No, you first.
Like hell. I think that the entire thing of like we get more info. I think it's like a little bit chungus, to be honest, because like everyone knows what everyone plays nowadays. You know, like maybe there's like one pick, but I think you always tell yourself that as a player and as a coach. It's
yeah,
like,
of course.
We get hidden info and stuff like this. But it's like
By the way, if anything, that what this actually leads to is whoever you are, you should always brainwash your players. Whatever you got was better. If you're in the upper bracket, hey, we didn't show as much, and also we're better than them, and they had to play an extra game their time. If you're the lower one, hey, we're warmed up, boys. We see what works for us. We've sorted all our issues out. Actually, they didn't play an extra. You should just brainwash them either way. It's just obvious.
As Peter will well know, being a good coach means also being a master gaslighter.
Of course.
So. Yeah.
Your players will lose trust in each other and in themselves, but you can never do it, right? Maybe you're gaslighting yourself, you know, into believing that this will definitely work no matter what, you know. That's but yeah, I mean, the one thing I will say that is a bit weird from this is that we're going to play like the double lower bracket. So we play Fnatic versus KC on Friday, then into Koi on Saturday, then into G2. So I think playing two best of fives, I think you can argue the lower bracket is an advantage. When you're playing three best of fives back to back, I think that is, I think that's probably like a pretty harsh punishment for Casey and Fnatic. But especially if one of those series goes to 5 games. Like, imagine you're KC, you play 5 games against Fnatic, then 5 games against MCoy, you're not beating G2. You're like, if you have 2-3-0s, maybe it's an advantage. But if you have 2-3-2s, I think there's a disadvantage there for sure. But if there were only 2 games, if it was like just the top 3, then I think that a best of 5 the day before is not necessarily a bad thing.
I mean, you could also throw in, though, the other downside to being the upper bracket team is you don't know which team you're playing. So you have like part of a day to practice for the eventual finalist, whereas you had like a week before the upper bracket final or whatever it was. So it's also a con turns that way too. Nobody gets the total advantage. Anyway, obviously in the LEC right now, there are all sorts of factors that pertain to how good the region is and who the best are that actually relate to one of our sponsors, which is, of course, Factor Meals, isn't it? So just like how everyone wanted LEC to stop being a one-team region. I'm not quite sure at the end of the year that worked out. But listen, it was working out for the rest of the year. We had all this beautiful variety and diversity at the top end, you know. Well, similarly, there's more variety and more meals available from Factor because they have now a wider selection of weekly meal options, including premium seafood choices like salmon and shrimp at no extra cost. Now, just like people wanted G2 to be the best, but they wanted them to be tested and actually have a chance when they go internationally, obviously, that's all about who you surround yourself with. Who do you play against? What's the ecosystem? Well, actually, Factor can support your wellness goals because they've got even more GLP-1 friendly meals. Looking at it, that's the latest Vogue thing. They've got the Mediterranean diet options with protein and good for you fats. And once you get out of Europe and you go to that international tournament, people want you to then get a taste of all the world's different flavors, don't they? How do the Chinese do it? How do the Koreans do it? How do they do it over in America? Well, that's just Europe imported, isn't it? But anyway, they can savor global flavors with Factor because for the first time, try Asian-inspired meals like Kana in Carmine Corp maybe, with bold flavors influenced by China, Thailand, and more. And obviously they have awesome nutrition options. Apparently 97% of customers say that Factor helped them live a healthier life. That's like a really upvoted Reddit thread for you Zoomers out there. So it must be true if all the Zoomers said it is. So you can eat smart at factormeals.com/BDLS50 off. Use code BDLS50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code BDLS50 off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Get delicious, ready to eat meals delivered with Factor. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with the code and qualifying auto renewing subscription purchases. Thank you to anyone who chooses Factor. It is actually really lovely. I've tried some of their meals. And way better than just making your own stuff, and it's way better than like microwave meals normally because they actually have a special way that they prepare these ones and make them up, etc. They have proper chefs that craft them all. Shout out to anyone who supports it. Let's just do the last section of the show. Now we do have 20 minutes here, boys. We can still get all the points in, but let's just not go ridiculous. So let's start. Dan, set the table. What is your ugly point?
I think that if T1 doesn't make it to Worlds, same as either Casey doesn't make it to Worlds, it's going to like first of all invalidate the tournament a little bit.
Oh, okay.
And secondly, I think it's going to really hurt the viewership.
Sure.
Ooh.
Expand a bit. Go on. Give me a reason why.
Well, it's like the entire year has kind of been like T1 against Genji, right? Or like kind of like AL is a little bit up there as well.
Yeah.
As like every final is kind of like Genji against T1, and it was always like pretty close. It was like 3-2, and there's always these like who's better, Guma or Ruler, and no one can really get like an answer. And there's like Faker or Chovy. Yeah, Chovy's better in lane, but Faker's the GOAT, you know. And now I think they're playing play-ins against the 4th seed Chinese team was like Weibo or IG or something like this. If they lose, Faker's not at Worlds. I mean, like let's say Genji wins, pretty high chance. I mean, I don't know. Like, there's always going to be this like haunting thing of like, I mean, Chovy won Worlds, but like Faker wasn't in a tournament, and
that's true.
Like,
yeah.
So yeah, I think it might be also like pretty bad because Faker's always been the poster boy, right?
Sure.
And I don't know who. I don't know who the next poster boy for League's going to be. Maybe Caliste, who knows? But yeah, if your poster boy's not at Worlds, it's going to suck for whoever's going to win because it's like, well, you won, but like T1 wasn't there. So yeah.
Ooh, so I'd say for this, T1 have basically put themselves in this situation. But
I mean, yeah, of course, you know. Like,
but what I would say is that they are playing the 4th. So the thing about T1 is that they're always the China killers, right? they're always the team that beats the team from China. So if there was a team from China that was able to finally get like one over T1, I think that would give you the story. That would give you something, right? It's not like they're not contributing anything, right? But I think that would be a big storyline. But yeah, obviously it's always fun to have T1 at Worlds because when they do badly or whether they do well, different parts of the fan base get to have a lot of fun about it. What I would say though is the way that LCK have done their qualifying system. This is unfortunately just how it's worked. I mean, if anything, I blame KT. It's always KT's fault. KT are the team who should be the 4th seed over the course of this year. They somehow won that series, and now they're in the position. So maybe we blame KT for this, but I think that yes, I agree with everything you're saying, but I think T1 not being at Worlds will give other stars the chance to shine. The only disadvantage I think is if Gen G win. I think if HLE win Worlds,
bro,
beating
Zeus is gonna be so happy.
okay, so obviously, even if you're a T1 hater, you should still want T1 to be at Worlds, right? Like if you think T1 are rubbish, like just having them lose to a Western team is like the biggest humiliation. Like if you love seeing T1 fans suffer, you want them to be at Worlds, right? If you support T1, obviously you want to see T1 at Worlds, right? So let's just say if we don't see T1 at Worlds, right? And Gen G win the tournament, I think that's question mark. If HLE win the tournament, I think that tells you something, right? I don't think it's as bad if HLE win. I think it's bad if Knight or Chovy win and Faker isn't there. I agree, but I think if BLG or Gen G win, but I think for the others, I think it gives other people a chance to take the limelight. And if anything, we then go from instead of Faker being the big bad boss that the fans think that he is, it becomes Chovy or it becomes Knight. And somebody beats those guys, then I think you've still got a good storyline. But if those guys win, then I think that you always have an asterisk. I think, in my opinion.
I do in general agree. Like, first of all, in theory, just T1. If you actually want to be really cynical, if you want max viewership, you just want the most popular teams in the world. So, yes, of course, you want T1 from Korea, and you want KC from Europe, and you want all these teams. In theory, you'd even want probably like Team Liquid as well, or Cloud9 if you could have had them from America as well. You'd want all the teams that have the biggest viewership base, and then you'd also want them to have the great players there. I agree with that too. Like, I know what you mean. Put it this way, I'd even go one further. I think if you have Chovy finally win Worlds and you're a Chovy fan, you shouldn't just want Faker to be in the tournament. Ideally, you should want him to beat him in the playoffs, like what could have happened last year. That's the best storyline to do what you want, which is the transfer of power, and he's now the real GOAT candidate, and he even beat him head. Like, that's actually just a better storyline too. Whereas if instead you beat like KT Rolster in a quarterfinal, who gives a fuck about that? No one will remember that. Sorry, they won't. Like, it won't have the same ripple across history. Then also, I will say there is one set of people though that will enjoy T1 going into this decider match and then losing, which is my people. We're a hidden tribe. We're called rookie fans. If you're a rookie fan, you hope IG plays that game and knocks Faker out of getting into fucking Worlds right in 2025 and goes, right, that's that taken care of. And then it's the only time they've ever played the International BO5. So you go, right, there you go, 1-0. That's the end of their careers. They never play again. Guess we know who's better. Not really, but that will be the angle I'll use to fucking torch all the Faker fans. So there's that part. I actually agree on the European angle too. I do think as well, it sucks for the narrative of both Europe in terms of like developing more talent and Caliste directly. If he only plays first stand, which remember was scoffed at the beginning and then they just made it through that bizarre, like everyone was losing to each other and they got to the final off beating CF4. That's not as cool as if he makes the playoffs and Worlds or if he has a series against like, by the way, the obvious ones you should want. This is, by the way, if you're a Europe fan, you should love KT's going. There's a world Caliste could actually beat like DanDan, mate. Like, there's players out there, it's not impossible. He's not going to do that against fucking Ruler probably, yeah, but again, you put him against some of these people, you'd have a chance. I also think that's why for KC as well, it's such a bummer they had to miss EWC and MSI. They only got the one international tournament. It's the one that right now, because it never existed before and it's such a small format, no one really cares about that one, I'm sorry. We did at the moment because it was all we had to watch, but the second that went away, some people I think forget it even exists. Like, it doesn't even feel like it was one. Like, the joke is EWC is more competitive than that, even though it's not in the Riot circuit. So I think it's a good point to make. That would be an ugly. That's why I like that you put it in ugly as well, not good or bad. I think you've nailed it. Go then, Peter. Oh, sorry, go on. We've only got 15 minutes or so. Make whatever extra point, but don't cannibalize your next point. Go for it.
Is EU fans claiming Shadow as a token European now that he's won the LPL.
Sure.
Because there's a funny clip from a BLG fan who like showed like an interview, like a mini discussion Shadow was having with some fans at the signings and the BLG fan meet afterwards. And I'll just quote what it said, right? Which is like the fan says, like, Shadow, yesterday I saw the EU co-streamers supporting you, calling you their fan and the light of EU. What do you think about this? And Shadow's like, that's not what they were saying when they kicked me out. They were like, after Worlds back then, they thought I was playing really poorly. They kicked me out from the region. And the region I want to beat most when I come back for Worlds this year is EU, which I think is very, very funny. Because, sure, look, I love Shadow. I think that Shadow basically has been very, very poorly treated by the European fan community and the European, professional team community because he's a really good guy. Like, I cannot stress, like, he's actually like an amazing guy outside the game, and basically has been shit on for everyone for like a very, very long time and fought his way up. But the reason I'm making this an ugly point, right, is that it shows how quickly narratives can shift, right? Because this is a guy, you go back to 2020, worst jungler in the league, right? Like, he made All Pro, but like, there were certain co-streamers, because he picked a lot of Lee Sin, right? And like, there were certain co-streamers who like hate Lee Sin and were like, oh, this guy's only playing Lee Sin and Lee Sin isn't a real champion and things like this, right? And therefore there was a lot of narrative against him, like just dismissing his accomplishments. And then he goes to China. It's well known that he tried out for several European teams last off season, but because of the lingering, I think some part of that was the like kind of the lingering narrative that's around him. And then as soon as he goes and wins the championship, everyone is like, oh, Shadow was always EU. We've always backed him. We've always believed in him. Yeah, EU talent beating LPL. And I think that there's a lesson here, right, to be learned, which is that if you are somebody that is in, and so I would say Shadow is probably one of the worst people that I've seen in terms of how they're treated by the community. What I would say is that if you are somebody who the narrative is against, just look at the Shadow example, work hard, and just recognize the narrative can switch like that. Right, just on the back of a single result or a single good split, I mentioned the Shadow thing as being an ugly thing because it shows how quickly people will forget the past. But I will say that my experience from talking to players and working with a lot of players whose narratives are swung, they very rarely forget. Right, like if you are somebody who is like massively flame somebody when they're at their worst point, they are much less. They will hold those grudges for a very, very long time, right? Especially if they make their way back up again. So yeah, so that's what I say from the Shadow example. It's an ugly point because it shows how quickly narrative can switch, but also how narrative can impact somebody's career in a very, very negative way and their opportunities. That's what I would say.
I think I'm not sure if things are just meant to be or anything is like deserved, so to say, because I did see a tweet the other day. It's like, oh, the two best junglers are in NA and in China, and I'm like, bro, like, what do you mean?
Oh, like Western junglers, you mean, right? Like that.
Well, it's like inspired,
right?
And
yeah, sure,
it's like both EU junglers, right? And I was like, I don't know if this is like true, like, because sure, inspired was good in Rogue, but maybe it just doesn't fit in the culture because he has like FlyQuest coaching staff is Nuke Duck Mithy, not bad players, not bad coaches, like I'm sure that they have to like tell him to shut the fuck up sometimes, and I know that Inspired's gonna have like this and that, and I mean I also like in regards to Shadow as well. I mean I played against him as well. I didn't think he was exceptionally great, to be honest. Still better than me, but like not like world caliber by any means. I was like, this guy, like whatever. Like I know Russ was gonna like out jungle him like no matter what, right? And then maybe it's just it needs a bit of a like culture change, like maybe right now he's really good. Inspired right now is really good in EU. Maybe he's completely unbearable. Maybe he just needed like two like mega alpha coaches that just know exactly how they want to play the game and like tell him to shut the fuck up whenever he's whenever he's wrong. Like you also have Whip on the team, who I know for a fact is probably not going to like just sit in the back and not say anything either. So I think maybe he just needed a culture that was going to be like understand like differently. I think maybe he needs a team there where he can like play differently. And I wouldn't really say that maybe it's like deserved, but things are just meant to be. He's happy right now, I'm guessing, and he's like playing good. And in EU he was unhappy, and in EU he was not great. Inspired in EU, I don't know if you want to tell me if he was great or not, but I think he's better now than he was in EU. So
sure.
yeah, I don't know if it's just like meant to be or something. I mean, obviously sad, like no no player should ever get like flamed to fuck. I've heard a lot of bad things because I played with Hiva as well, right? He had a bad time in Origin as well. No one deserves that, but yeah, I don't know. It is what it is, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say I will come between the two positions. The problem is this. I do think people, I mean, it's often the case, they just remember not only your last game that they saw, but also the international. Obviously, people put that at an enormous premium, sometimes too much, in my opinion, as seen by the careers of Knight and Trophy until recently. So I do think what people forget is, if you only consider what he was like in LEC, Shadow was good, and he was a good prospect, but he was insanely limited. Like, if he was on Lee Sin, he was unbelievable, and then every other champion, he was just like a good or average player, and then for me, he needed development. That's the problem. And in fact, I wouldn't even say it's like he was the hidden gem. I would say what happens is he was abandoned. Like, there are plenty of players that have had like some promise and an iffy first year, but they get the second year, or they get onto another team and they do that. You know, maybe they go to a lower LEC team and they prove themselves and they fight their way back. He didn't get that chance, and people did, particularly because the team got wrecked in the play-ins, basically just be like, right, he's the reason why, fuck him, get him out. And I will say, at that Worlds, he did not play a single Lee Sin game. All the rest of the year, that was his best champ. Some games people banned it, sometimes they just didn't pick it. Maybe they just didn't like the meta at the time, whatever. So the point is, I do think that does in people's minds establish like he looked really bad and they thought he entered the game. By the way, spoiler, any support and jungle who is active, who plays badly, will always look like the worst player in the fucking game if you're at Worlds. Like, just obvious. Like at this point in time, it can't be a coincidence, those roles, guys. I will say, the whole thing about like, he wants to battle with Europe. There's actually a little bit about that that's a tiny bit complicated, which goes like this, right? One of the interesting things is, if you Google, apparently he wasn't just someone who like emigrated. He literally was born in Italy, apparently. So what's bizarre is, I will just say, it is a bit rich, because I get told all day long that anyone born in a country is just as much from that. He's just as Italian as anyone. He is Italian. What are you talking about? It's called birthright citizenship, right? So I will just say, one, if you are born in Italy, listen, mate, the place you were born considers you Italian. So I know your angle is more like, look, fuck the sort of LEC community, as it were, not Europe itself, but you know. And I'll also just point this out. Do you know who else considers you Italian, Shadow? Your own country. As far as I know, the scandal this year is that in China you're not allowed dual citizenship. Well, he would already have it by being born in Italy, by the way. And so the scandal was they were implying they were going to take his Chinese citizenship away from him, and that he'd be like an import. I mean, it wouldn't matter because you're not importing a million fucking players, are you? But there's even a weird angle on that one, which is like, mate, in a way they're not accepting you that much. Like, they have in the team, you let you win, but they're telling you outside the game you're not fucking Chinese or something. So that's its own nightmare can of worms. But if he just wants to make it like, I want revenge on LEC and the European community because they treated me like I was shit, they scapegoated me for the result. By the way, people like this can fucking get their share too, mate. There's plenty of people can have it from that Worlds. Maybe other people on this call, who knows? But anyway, the point is, yeah, plenty of people. Peter Don was there, by the way. Don't worry about it. DanDan. Yeah. So anyway, we don't mention that now. We don't mention that now. It's all good. So anyway, the point is, like, yeah, I understand why you'd say. By the way, I think it's a legit angle too, because think about this. By the way, Shadow didn't just play in the finals, guys. He was one of the players that came in and turned BLG around in the regular season. So where were all the LEC people then? Where were all the co-streamers? You don't even watch the LPL, you fucking bums. He was playing for one of the best teams in the regular split. You didn't know he was there. You didn't follow him. You didn't give a flying fuck. What happened was, you woke up one day, saw on Gamepedia BLG won, and someone told you, hey, that's Shadow, that old EU jungle. And then you went, hey, time for some free clout. Hey, I always thought Shadow was good. Lol, it's like LEC's one. No, he hasn't. You fucking idiots. And also, spoiler, he is ethnically Chinese. You know what I mean? It would be like that famous story back in the day where Doublelift got LPL offers. Yeah, he could have gone there, but he actually is ethnically Chinese. It wouldn't really be the same as like American wins LPL. Like, in a way, yes, he's an American citizen. That's why that whole thing's so silly to me. Like, I feel like people, here's the thing, it's a cool piece of trivia. It's not in any way indicative of anything, is it? Like, it's not really like Yankos went there and won with fucking TES instead of Kanavi, is it? Like, that's not really what, you're making it sound like it's that, but it's not really, is it? Like, spoiler, I'm going to go ahead and assume he can speak Chinese even. There's one angle that Inspired wouldn't have if he went there, believe it or not. I don't think Inspired would be a genius surrounded by 4 Chinese players, believe it or not. I think he'd be quite frustrated. They wouldn't know what the fuck he was saying or what he was doing in the game. So I think I agree to put it in ugly. I think that's a good spot, because I actually agree with all parties in this side. Like, everyone has their own weird perspective. And I also agree with Shadow. If I actually did Because here's the other thing. He didn't just sit on the bench since Mad Lions, by the way. He worked through the shittest LPL teams there are until BLG, who themselves have been desperate the whole time because they had to get Beishwan, who was dodgy himself. They basically had to just gamble. They were trying to get JJ from IG was the start. In the end, he got through essentially like sort of a trial almost at a bigger club, and he showed himself to be the better player. And lastly, here's the coolest part about that story. He didn't even start the final, guys. They started with Beishwan, but when they were losing, they treated him like the Bengi and brought him in as like the closer, and he did close out the series. So that's a cool story. Fair play to Shadow. Shout out to him. I don't really think it's got that much to do with Europe thoughts and whatever detail in it.
Sure. It's always fun to be involved, I guess.
Right, last point, and this I'm going to have to make this a fairly quick one, so I'll make it very, very concise. I'm going to put as my ugly, because it actually hasn't happened yet, which is why I'm picking it as ugly. I actually, right now, think there is a world where KC probably should be the favourite to win this match, right? After that, I actually think they will come third, even if they win this match. So I think they will come third, they will go to Worlds. My problem is when they go to Worlds, if they're having these issues in scrims now in LEC, I think that boot camp is going to kill that team dead when they get to China. So I'm going to say my ugly is this. As of right this moment, I actually think that Vladi is just fucking donezo in KC, and I think that is so ugly for KC and the league itself, because I think unless they either win the LEC or do some epic run at Worlds, he is going to be scapegoated. Spoiler, he is not French. He is going to be the scapegoated person. There's also all this shit that they've stupidly publicised and let leak out about Niski and about him playing in the scrims and about their issues, and even the way they've messaged that whole thing's been so confusing that I do feel like, unfortunately, they're going to be in a position where the fan pressure at the end of the year will be fire Vladi. And the reason why that will be ugly in itself, boys, anyway. They were the champions of the first split. It's even more ugly because if there's one thing you never want to do with a player like Vladi is give them away after the first rocky year. That would be by the way, by that logic, I'll give you an example, boys. It's not quite the same, but it's not too far off. You all won't remember this except for the people in this call. Caps in his first year was way more ints than you guys remember. Like, you could have made an argument if you were a Reckless fan back then, get this guy the fuck out the mid lane and get me like a responsible mid laner who plays mages or something so we can you could have said that, but if you'd have done that, wouldn't you have been the stupidest idiot ever if you'd have been Fnatic? You would have missed out on the next year, and obviously you hoped he would be your franchise player. So I think this is a franchise level player who's supposed to be like a Caliste, like a super talent. So the idea you might have to actually cut him, and even worse, bro, imagine someone like a GX just picks him up and they're like, oh cheers, we'll have the free upgrade. Like, I could see so many ways this could fuck the whole squad. So what are your thoughts on this, boys?
I think it's honestly pretty sad that he's being scapegoated, because I think he has been pretty great all year round. I think throughout the, like, even first season, second season, I think it's just great that you can get like somewhat like a rookie and he just performs, and he's just like, he's consistently top 10 as well, I think, or like even top 1, I think, and he's like perma streaming, so he does a lot of really, really good things, and his streams get like pretty good views. Like, his streams mega boring. It's just gameplay, right?
It's just him playing with music on for real. He just grinds all day long.
Yeah, but like, he's like a really big grinder. I think I like the rest of the KC team as well, to be honest. I think that they built their roster quite well. I would like to see them win. I think as of right now, maybe I'd say Fnatic is just a bit better, maybe. But I mean, I just like to see them win. I think that they are literally like the kind of like future of like Europe whenever it comes to like viewership, whenever it comes to hype, whenever like it's always hype, no matter what fucking team KC is playing against. Everyone always wants to see that match, because obviously they have like a lot of fans, and like and like Kameto's obviously like a huge deal with the stream and stuff as well. So I don't know, it would just suck to like I also hate that there's like rumors circulating about
exactly.
This, like,
the match isn't even over. We haven't even finished the split, for fuck's sake. It's crazy, isn't it?
Like, it just sucks because like he was supposed to be like support this key, or just like just there for like content, and now there's these things. Like, I haven't even looked at Twitter for like the last month, and then then like even I hear this somehow through some like clandestine fucking connections or whatever, and now I'm hearing like, oh, there's these troubles, and I'm like, how am I hearing this? Like, I'm not even trying to hear it, and it's just like, it just reaches your ear, and it's just like, it sucks for everyone, because like, it sucks for Niski, because then he's obviously like, his teammates are going to look at him differently. Either he has to like say something on Twitter publicly, or he doesn't, and then it just makes the entire situation just weird. And I know that there's already a lot of pressure on KC from the fans, because as great as like fan support is, there's also like a lot of pressure to like keep them happy. So yeah, I don't know. It's just a shit situation. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I'll summarize it quickly, but I think Vladi's biggest weakness this year as a rookie is that he wasn't better than Caps, who is like the EU GOAT, and Jojo Pyun, who is like the best mid laner in North America in the last like 6 or 7 years, 5 years, right? Right? And I mean, like, let's put things into context, right? Like, he's a rookie, right? Like, so obviously he's going to be a bit inconsistent. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the fact that we're having this conversation as if this is a done deal, which, like, it is ridiculous, but that's what it sounds like, right? If you go and follow things, I think the only team that benefits from Vladi leaving KC at the end of the year is Fnatic, because they will probably try to sign him, or maybe Heretics will try to sign him, and then that will make those teams look really fucking good. So I think that they would be wise to not listen to what the community is saying in this regard, because I think Vladi has actually had a really, really good year. And even if he'd been worse, even if he'd only been the 5th best mid in the league, I think he's been the 3rd best. But even if he was only the 5th best mid in the league, you should still give him more time as a rookie, because he has gone international and he actually played fine international as well. Right, so yeah, we'll see. Even if they lose to Fnatic, even if they get 3-0 destroyed by Fnatic and he gets completely outplayed, I think he should still be there next year.
I agree.
Right, there will be one more episode. It will be after the finals, where we'll wrap the whole season up, and then obviously we'll be done for the year. So we will see you on the next episode of the Best Damn League Show.